a delay because everyone in the world has COVID right now. And I think I'm on week 5 of sick, better, sick, better, sick, better, sick, better. It's just been an absolute mess. But on the mend, so hopefully not too many coughs today. And today's show, this is where things are going to start to get really crazy with PartnerUp. I'm super excited. And a little bittersweet too, where if you hadn't caught the past couple episodes, I'm no longer adrift. I kind of have some secret projects going on, and one of them we'll talk a little bit about today. And I'm introducing, we'll see if we can make him last, new co-host and friend of how long, Isaac? Going on 12, 13 years? Isaac Morehouse.
Yeah, well, all your other co-hosts have mysteriously disappeared, so I was all that was left in your Rolodex, and here we are. We're partnering up, you know.
I'm so stoked for this. So Isaac, you've done a lot of content production in your career. I mean, so for the folks that don't know, Isaac, I think we've been customers of each other for like a decade plus. Like I've bought stuff from you, you've bought stuff from me, and businesses you've started or businesses I've worked at. I even saw you with a Drift shirt on in an Instagram picture, and then going back to all the way to the website design days. But since then, I've hired, dozens of people from your company, Praxis, discoverpraxis.com, apprentice program. But during that's where I saw your like content creation skills like really take off. How many like podcasts? I mean, you've done a bunch of, you and TK. I mean, a bunch.
I'll tell you, yeah, I've written over 2,000 blog posts.
Holy smokes.
I've published 10 books. Most of those are collections of blog posts that are kind of put together. And then I've hosted like 4 different podcasts of my own over the years, but I've done at least 500 podcast interviews over the years, where I've been on other people's podcasts, and I've done, several hundred episodes of my own and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I just do it because I like it. I do it selfishly because it's fun, and it always turns out that turning on the mic or whipping out the keyboard and communicating about things that I'm interested in, honestly, on a really consistent basis, is a great way to build a community and to create a category, and then to be able to build products and services around that. So that's like the only thing that I actually do well is create content. I don't really know how to do anything else very well. I find other people for the rest.
Well, you might call that so for me, like the content creation side, it's the best way for me to learn, right? So going out and talking to people, and then even trying to formalize my thoughts into something that's cogent and digestible by another person is the best way for me to learn. You might even call it, Isaac, a hack, right? Might call it a hack, and I think this is where we should tease what we're working on, because there's a reason why we're kind of like testing this out and hopping in together, is that PartnerUp's going to be growing a little bit. And where should the folks that are listening today go right now in their web browser, on their phone? They need to go to a website, and I hinted at it with Hack, and sign up for the new newsletter that we're launching. The second this episode is live, the newsletter is live. So where should they go?
I'm glad you asked, Jared. PartnerHacker.com, and go sign up. Got a newsletter coming out there, as Jared mentioned. This is really interesting for me when Jared reached out and said, hey, you should check out this podcast I'm doing, check out some of this stuff. Maybe you can come on and co-host with me. And, for a minute I was like, okay, well, I don't get it. I don't know a lot about partnerships. I'm new to that world. As I started digging in though, and especially I listened to the episode with Jay McBain on the decade of partnerships, and something really just clicked. For one, it sort of clicked on the philosophical level, like the power of partnerships. Because something I've been thinking about for a long time is how the locus of trust is changing significantly, I think, in the world. So where people place their trust, early in the information age, oh great, information's free. This is amazing. Now I can finally get information about stuff. So it empowers me to make more decisions on my own because I can get the information directly. Well, because information's free, now there's so much of it, I'm overwhelmed and I don't trust myself to make decisions on my own. I mean, go look up anything. I bought a smoker recently for my wife, a meat smoker. It's like, go try to find information on which meat smoker should I buy. There's too much. And so you no longer trust yourself to make a lot of those decisions. You want someone who's already earned your trust through a pre-existing relationship right? To point you to things, and then you'll just say yes. If I have a buddy that says buy this smoker, I won't even ask a question. I'll just say yep, I'll do it. If I know that guy and I know that he's into food or whatever. And so just thinking through the way that this applies to sales and marketing and in the changes I've seen, so that's kind of at the philosophical level, and then at the practical level, I've seen changes in the businesses I've started. I started Praxis in 2013, best place in the world for entry level talent for your company. And then I started Crash in 2019, and it's amazing how much things have changed and how difficult it is. I've found it through direct sales or through marketing or through social media. I mean, even the content stuff that I do, it's a constant evolving game to cut through the noise. And so I started to get it. I started to go, okay, I know Jared is this guy who started a marketing firm. He started a talent company. He's been to, built a sales team at PandaDoc. And I'm like, partnerships? What is this? I don't know anything. Like, what are you doing partnerships for? And like, now I get it. There's something big happening. There's a shift happening in the world at a very high level. And I think anybody who's in partnerships gets it. They're on the cusp. They're in the hot space to be in right now. So
I think that's really important for everyone that's listening to understand that, like, this isn't just some hype machine. Like, I mean, I'm not monetizing this. I've been doing it for a year and a half for free for nothing, just to give back and learn. And over that period, I have seen a practice, Paul Graham talks about being a T-shaped entrepreneur, right? So, broad breadth of experience and then really deep in like one or two kind of functional side-by-side, practices. And I believe that partnerships it's a part of the business that's been ignored, but it's a function whose time has come. And I'm not sure that I was looking at it that way a year and a half ago. I mean, I was honestly looking at the profession, if you will, from the perspective of it's one of the only things I'm good at just inherently. And no one else talks about it. There's no books, there's no resources, there's no way to learn. So I kind of became this person that it was actually started in the VC world. So some of the VC funds that I advise and help out, they started passing my name around to help out some of their portfolio companies. Because this is how I entered into it. For those of you who haven't heard the story, or at least starting the podcast, was I would have a VP of sales that I knew or a CMO that I knew intro me to an account executive or like a CSM that's like, hey, I just put, such and such to lead partnerships. Can you have a call with them? And I'm like, okay, 30 minutes, I'm going to unpack the entirety of this profession and how complex it is. From their perspective, it was like, yeah, just talk to Jared and you'll get it. And it's like, no, I've talked to the best people I know in partnerships over dozens of episodes, and I'm learning. So I'm excited to be on this learning journey with you, Isaac. I'm still, a little Socratic, a little Platonic in that I act like I know nothing, and I'm here to learn along with the audience. And I'm excited to launch the newsletter with you too. That's going to be a blast.
Well, I actually do know nothing, so that that would be a good comment. I get to ask all the dumb questions. It's funny. I was listening to some of your back episodes, and I mean, look, this is embarrassing to say, being that I've for almost 10 years now been an entrepreneur, started a couple companies, whatever. But I had to look up a couple things, like some of the acronyms and stuff. It's like, okay, SVI, so, because, I've worked at early stage small companies, and, primarily even the companies that we've worked with and placed people with in Praxis have been smaller, earlier stage. So a lot of the kind of inside jargon, the industry stuff, a lot of the tools, a lot of the, acronyms and stuff, I'm like, I think I know what that is. Let me just go double check. So anyway, I get to be the guy who looks silly from time to time. So Jared, I want to ask you just about your own journey, because from the outside, when
are we gonna break protocol, Isaac? And I always try to force everything into a topic on this show, and then you're gonna try to make me tell my story on this one, huh?
Well, I'm sure you could find a way to weave your story into a topic. I'm sure you can. But I'm really curious.
Break protocol. I mean, might as well. It's an intro to Isaac, new series. We'll see. I'm still friends with everyone, by the way. So Kevin, Justin, Michelle, shout out to all of them for co-hosting with me. I think, this one, I think, given Isaac and I's past history, we're going to be around for a while. I just have a feeling. But But that being said, we're putting Isaac to the test as
could
well. So
could start a
um,
betting pool on how long I'll survive.
yeah, what's
Um,
the over under on how many shows we do together? No, I think we'll be around for a bit. This is going to be a blast. I've already enjoyed the past week of us geeking out in Slack and Google Docs and launching the newsletter. So I interrupted you, Isaac. You
no,
were
no,
going into some
yeah. So I'm breaking protocol, something I'm very good at doing. From the outside, I'm like, okay, from what I know of you, you're a very entrepreneurial guy. You're very, creative. You're a hustler. You kind of don't let the grass grow under your feet. You're trying a bunch of stuff. You're moving. You're connecting. You're doing all kinds of stuff. You're a busy guy. You're a productive guy, and you're kind of a visionary guy. What what like did you accidentally find yourself in partnerships, or was this a deliberate move? Did you see, okay, this is where the action is, or this is where my skill set fits, this is where I want to be, or did you just sort of end up there?
Yeah. So there's what happened a long time ago, and then what happened in more recent memory. The story that sticks out in my mind was when I had my marketing agency, Market Aces. We had a couple dozen employees. Agency owning an agency business is a hard business. You're trading time for money. That's why I've always had a respect for channel partnerships, agency partnerships, trying to partner as a technology company with service-based companies, is being on the other side of that table and recognizing the agency that I'm trying to partner with, they trade time for money, right? Like there's nothing worse that you can do than trade time for money. I mean, that is like the hardest business to run, because you're literally placing a value on time and intellectual property. So I ran that business, and one of the reasons that business is so hard is that your P&L, your cash flow restarts with every new contract. I mean, back then, 2010, 2011, 2012, the recurring revenue in services wasn't the norm. I mean, that's why my mentor for the past two companies has been Pete Caputa, who we've had on the show before. Pete was the godfather of modern channel, built HubSpot's partner program from $0 to 100 million plus, right? The best partner program for agencies of the past decade, hands down. There's not even a close second. Learned a ton from Pete. But having sat on the other side of the table, I remember at Market Aces going to a conference, one of those political conferences. We won't go into that too much. That Isaac and I used to, roll in those same circles. It was some conference. I bought a booth there, probably with like my last dollars, and I think I had 8 sales like meetings that came out of that conference, and I closed all 8 of them, and I was like, am I in sales? And I was just the business owner. Like I was never thought of myself as a salesperson. I just needed to pay my people. I needed business. I was at a conference. People asked, what do you do? It was a nonprofit conference. And then I landed 8 clients out of 8 conversations that emanated from that in a row. And I was like, apparently I'm in sales. I know nothing about sales, but apparently I'm in sales.
Yeah, nothing helps you figure out if you're good at sales faster than needing to eat,
Totally. And that was like when I realized that, I mean, so sales is a part of partnerships, but what's also a part of partnerships is product and customer success and marketing. And it's as interdisciplinary a function as you can get that's not the title CEO. And that's why I think I made this prediction on another previous episode with Justin. I was saying that I think the best entrepreneurs of the next decade are going to be those that are well steeped in partnerships, because you have that breadth of experience. Yeah. So the next phase of that, where I realized, okay, sales, was when I had my SaaS company, Job Hive. So we were backed by Foundry Group. It was my first foray into like venture capital. That's definitely a beer story for the implosion of that company, which I will not talk about publicly.
I have wanted to get a little more depth on that story. Someday we'll have to do that. But I remember you had one of the coolest interfaces. You were so early
amazing.
ahead of the game.
We were way ahead, dude. Far ahead. So far ahead.
Probably too far ahead.
I have my hands tied a little bit. Long story short, I will not speak ill of X person, but I had to resign as CEO of my own company. I mean, it almost killed me. I mean, I put everything I had into it. And that again, so Actually, this is where I'll do the mid-roll plug for SaaS Connect. See, look, I do that every time. I'm so good at getting the plug in. So, Cloud Software Association, April 27th and 28th. So, go to cloudsoftwareassociation.com, which I actually just joined the board of directors of. So, super excited about that. And then Isaac and I are going to be there April 27th, 28th at the conference in person, San Francisco. And guess what? We're going to have the PartnerUp podcast booth. So guests can swing by, like hop in for like a couple minutes, and we're actually going to do a big aggregate show. I'm super stoked about that. So Cloud Software Association, SaaS Connect is the conference. Everyone's going to be there. All the big names that I know are going to be there, and I can't wait to meet you all. So come out, register, join. So back on track with the episode is at Job Hive. This is where I'm moving interdisciplinary from like realizing I was good at sales to understanding the implications of how marketing and product really went hand in glove with partnerships. So I built partnerships with, this is 2013, LinkedIn, Career Builder, Monster, Indeed, and we aggregated all of the job listings from all of those sites and built a viral loop to where you could apply to any job on the internet. And with that came me sending applicants into other, like Indeed's listing, right? So like I would get an applicant from Monster, they'd end up searching on Job Hive, and they'd go to Indeed. Then I could sell that lead to Indeed, and then I'd get jobs. So we had this great viral loop and built some amazing partnerships that wasn't about sales. It was really about the intersect of product and customer success. And that was the kind of second realization that was like, oh, this is a function. And that was, so post Job Hive and Beer Story for Cloud Software Association. Whenever you come meet up in person, I can give you the full story. Was whenever I joined PandaDoc as like the first kind of partnership / revenue leader with Makita and Sergey, instead of just hopping into sales, I actually started with partnerships. So like that's whenever it got real, because I was at a company that would soon be, a unicorn. I mean, back then it was literally an apartment that I lived in, PandaDoc. So I mean, it was early, but now a known unicorn in HubSpot. I think it just gone public 2014, 2015. I think those were like my first two realizations, and then the HubSpot PandaDoc story is where I started to really geek out and think this is a discipline that it's so underutilized, understudied, bemoaned, that like whenever I executed on it, I didn't even realize, like at PandaDoc, how little support there was for people in roles that like I had. I just was out there geeking out on it and having fun with it. So now I'm glad to see that, we have a solid podcast, a fantastic listener base. I think we're number one, Apple, Spotify, Google, you name it, which is pretty crazy.
Number one.
But I think that genuine, like, I'm talking about like a decade plus of doing this in a practitioner's seat and just learning more and more. And the further I go down the rabbit hole, the more Alice in Wonderland it gets.
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of like to nerd out on economics and kind of philosophizing about the world and the market at sort of that higher level of abstraction. And one thing that I've spent a lot of time thinking about over the last decade, because I've worked with young people, or especially in early careers, but sort of the future of careers, the future of work. And I've often looked to the economist Ronald Coase, his seminal paper, The Theory of the Firm, and kind of, his breakdown of why do firms exist. Because
hold on. I'm going to pause you there real quick, because that's one of the reasons I want to bring you into this, is that like, there's another level of intellectualism that I think we're going to geek out and get into and have some fun with on this podcast. Not that we'll go down too deep down those rabbit holes, but I love that drop. So who was the author again, and what was the paper?
Ronald Coase. Yeah, he was a phenomenal economist. He only wrote like 2 papers, but they're both like the most cited papers ever. The Theory of the Firm, really famous paper. And essentially, and I won't go too far down this, but essentially he suggests that, firms come about because there are transaction costs. There's information costs and transaction costs, search costs in the economy. And so if every time you performed an action, you had to go find somebody to do it for you, to figure out if they were good, perform the trans. If you had to do that repeatedly for these for these things that you do repeatedly, the costs are really high. So what you do is you form a firm where you just hire the person one time, you put them on salary, and now they just do it anytime you need it. But there's a trade-off, because when you have a firm, you have agency costs. And that's why the world hasn't evolved into just one gigantic firm. But the bigger the firm is, the principal agent problem, it's called, right? Where the incentives of the principals, the owners of the firm, the board, whoever, are not perfectly aligned with the incentives of the employees. So classic example, an IT director, it's sort of in their interest for there to be lots of IT problems, because then their department, right? Or they have an information asymmetry, so they can go and say, hey, we got to hire this guy. He's really good. He costs X, and maybe it's their buddy and they're good. And you can't, because you've hired them to do this for you, you don't know if they have your interest in mind. And so there's always this tension between these two. And information costs and search costs are, the reason firms form, and transaction costs. The internet has brought those down so low that firms are needed in fewer and fewer places. Like more and more people are capable of freelancing or doing contract work. It's easier than ever. You can go out and buy SaaS products instead of having a department in-house, right? So I've been thinking about this for a long time at the level of the individual, how gig work and kind of this more free-flowing freelancer combo, some semi-employee sort of structure has been emerging because of information costs. But you have made me start to think about it with this partnership stuff at the level of the organization itself. So like, not only can individuals sort of become their own firm and interact with other individuals almost like each of them is their own company instead of all needing to come together as under the same roof. The company itself doesn't have to attempt to be world class at every function. So this is what partnerships do. It allows you to say, whoever does sales best, whoever does content best, whoever does product best, let them do it best. And we can work together to benefit each other. So you don't have to say we have to be the best at all of these things in this process. If there's another company, I'm just really good at generating demand, but somebody else is better at building a product to service those people. I can generate demand and they can build the product, and we can be two separate companies and still work together and still benefit each other and feed each other, right? It's this kind of like you don't need to, obviously mergers and acquisitions are always going to happen, but you don't need to have one mega company that does everything best. You can kind of specialize at the level of the organization through these really unique types of partnerships. And you're seeing it with influence, obviously, with people who are just really good at getting people to like them and listen to them and watch their shows. And like, why would I try to have somebody in-house who is really, really good at being likable when I can partner with someone who's just naturally good at being likable, and that's not my core competency.
Yeah. It has the influence, already.
Yes.
Root to the word influencer has influence, which what's funny, Isaac, is in the partner world, there's two comments I have to make about this, because I was just like on the edge of my seat, like wanting to jump in as you were talking about this, because you just made me realize something that like your realization from where you were to where kind of like I'm, trying to learn, was a big one. But when you said influencer, it's like, that's the dirtiest word in partnerships. There's partner influence and partner source, typically at the CFO level. Like, hey, I have to pay out, like, oh, that partner just influenced that, in B2B, that is. That partner just influenced that, right? So they helped out after we already had an opportunity. Like, why are we paying them out? Like, partner influence is the dirtiest phrase in partnerships. But it's like, at the same time, if you have an influencer for a brand, the likelihood that influencer is driving net new leads and instead is not driving further consumption, right, or pushing that person over the edge, is very low. Like, I think next time, so comment one is, next time someone gives you crap for partner influence, it's like, do you know what an influencer is? Right? You kind of bring that up as like, influence is everywhere. Let's not treat that as a dirty word, because it's not just about driving net new leads. It's about influencing the peer group, right? So if you have someone that has influence, right, they're an influencer, even in the B2B sense, over, a customer that you're talking to, they can either be talking positively about you or negatively about you. If they talk positively, I want to reward them, right? Like, otherwise, there's too many other options. They can go be influential to someone else. And then the second thing that you said is that, B2B always lags like B2C, right? The consumer trends are always prior to the business trends. And the way that you were just talking about that and using some like a priori principles, right? First principles of like what is true and why that shifted in our consumer lives, and how the long tail is now shifting and seeping over into our business lives. That goes back to like kind of how we opened up this podcast about it's a profession whose time has come. And it's not that it wasn't important 5 years ago. It's just the asymmetry in B2B was still there, right? There was an information asymmetry. Like the marketing organization, the sales organization, the CS organization had more information than the buyers. And let's be honest, we were all addicted to cheap acquisition costs, right? Throw more ads, send more emails, make more phone calls. And that's not working anymore. Like it's 5 years ago, it was like, okay, maybe this is starting to break. 3 years ago, it's like, I think it's breaking. And then 2022 post pandemic, it's like, it don't work at all the same way that it used to. Not even close.
You know that it's getting bad when like every day I have emails where I'm like, okay, what are they going to try to trick me with this time? Where there's some product where some sales rep has done something like, I notice it's foggy where you live today. And like just trying these crazy tactics to get, it's like clickbait has worked its way into the sales, sales emails and things. Yeah. So, like, man, they're scraping.
Yeah. Like I saw it was raining this morning in, Tennessee or St. Pete. And it's like, no one I know would like open up, like when people open up with the weather in a Zoom call, it's awkward, much less in a cold email, and like that's the hacks that people are trying to get to.
So, okay. So I can give you a really short story of Crash. So I did Praxis, bootstrap that. And then in 2019, I raised some venture capital to do Crash, which is more of a product company, which was a wild ride in and of itself. That's a beer story as well, which, still running Crash, still involved with Praxis as well. But we found that two little partnership lessons that I learned. So our main thing that we offer is essentially a custom video pitch builder for people on the job market. So instead of sending a resume,
where did you get that idea from, Isaac? Where did you get that idea from?
Hey, you know what?
Was it from a company called JobHive circa 2013?
It's funny because when I saw JobHive, I remember thinking Praxis participants could use this because these are people without college degrees, without experience, younger than the average. And anyway, what Praxis people ended up doing was making either pitch decks or YouTube videos. So that's kind of where the idea from Crash came from. Let's create a platform that lets people self-serve and do this. And we found people on the job hunt, it's very, very hard to convince them to do more than click apply. If they can go click apply 100 times in a day, even though it gets like a 0.04% response rate, that's easier than going and spending 20 minutes making a video pitch. I'll just stick with that. So getting them to do the additional work is very difficult. But we found boot camps, a couple different boot camps, sales boot camps, coding boot camps. They have students and it's on them to place them because many of them have ISA arrangements where they only get paid if the student gets hired. So now you have the student who wants to get hired and the boot camp itself who really wants them to get hired. And they're like, oh, video pitches get an 80% response rate. Great. We're going to automatically make it part of our curriculum to have them create a video pitch and send it. And those customers, it's like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the way. This is so much easier because they already have buy-in and Crash doesn't need to convince them of anything. They don't need to care about Crash. Their boot camp has told them this is the tool. This is just the tool we're going to use to help you go and do this. So that lesson. And then the second one was we created a top of funnel, an email called the Daily Job Hunt, which we just launched in May or June of 2021. And
now
using
you're
all
six figures in subscribers, right?
Yeah, we're over 125,000 subscribers now, and it's been growing. Every month has grown bigger than the month before. And it's really funny because we spent the first couple of years, we crank out the content. We hundreds of blog posts, 12 career guides, a book, a podcast, like constantly. And the returns were just diminishing. And it didn't matter if we sponsored it, if we put money on it, whatever. putting it into an email format, and then finding some partnerships with what's called co-registration, which is like a new, channel that it was new to me, with some of these like jobs boards aggregators where people are going to scan jobs and they have to create an account. And at the account creation process, there's little check boxes. Hey, would you also like to book a call with this boot camp, join the daily job hunt email, get information about this? And it's like at that moment, because the friction of sign up has already been done, they already have something that they want, and then they can choose. They're not being automatically opted in. That would be a terrible subscriber list. They can choose if they want this additional add-on, and it's very relevant to where they are. They're looking for a job right now, and the daily job hunt email. That has been an absolute growth machine, like just blowing away all the other stuff. So it was like we had all this content, but the ways to get value out of it, to get it out to people, just kept getting harder and harder and harder. SEO's getting noisier, the paid stuff's getting noisier. Co-registration was like absolute game changer. So I had those experiences myself, and just got like a little taste of where things are going.
Yeah, I mean, that strategy, like this is why this podcast is important in developing, Partner Hacker. We're starting it as a newsletter, so check it out, PartnerHacker.com, sign up for the newsletter. There's going to be a lot more to come behind that because, you did that 2019. Here's my experience with that at PandaDoc and HubSpot. One of the things that I was able to successfully do, whenever I started that partnership, we were nobody. I mean, a team from Belarus, like literally people were like, oh, Belarus, where's that? Like that no one knew even where it was, right? And that's where like the company was founded, Makita and Sergey, and going all the way to HubSpot CRM in the span of like 2 years since launch became the number one CRM for SMB. And every single time, Isaac, someone signed up for HubSpot CRM, they get a nurture journey, right? So dedicated emails, right? That would be like, this nurture journey is pretty standard in SaaS today, but back then the whole point was like, they had 7 emails that they wanted to send to like help people activate in HubSpot CRM. One of them, we worked and convinced the HubSpot team to be, connect your integrations, and that the most important integration was whenever they closed their first deal. So the retention of someone in HubSpot CRM when they closed their first deal was by far the biggest retention metric. There wasn't even a close second. So PandaDoc being where we were, like I discovered that, and I'm like, hey, put PandaDoc in that email. And that went out to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I mean, I think at one point it's like 20,000, every other 20,000 a week to every other week. I mean, it was dozens of thousands a month. And where else were we going to get that kind of distribution to literally someone that was our ideal buyer? They were in CRM. They were going to be sending proposals and quotes and contracts to close deals. And it was like that perfect inflection point. And that one thing did more for us that 1 year than any other paid demand gen, hack, email. We threw all sorts of stuff at the funnel, and that did more for us than anything else. But I mean, that play, so to speak, how to identify that, how to go through that process. Like we arrived at a very similar thing. Being at the right inflection point of the customer journey, either at sign up or at activation or what have you. If you haven't experienced that, how do you find out that is a play that exists?
Yeah. It's funny.
You found it out. Right.
I remember reading Rand Fishkin's book, Lost and Founder, which is a really fun book. And he said something in there that always stuck with me. He said, basically, no matter what you try to do to escape it, every company's DNA is going to be the founder's DNA. And so, if the founder is wired a certain way and they're good at certain things, that's always going to be a part of the company culture. And of course, you can see, whatever Steve Jobs was obsessed with detail, and Apple has that in its DNA, right? And I remember, content is so much in my DNA that I have sort of built content and community to sort of craft a category and build a customer base with my companies. And I remember thinking, and my brother is also an entrepreneur, and had a very, very successful fintech company. And I was like, man, your content game sucks. You guys don't have anything on your blog. And I'm thinking like me, right? And he kept trying, and I kept trying to help him and consult him. And I would send him young people to help run it. he kept trying to have a content game, but it's not in his DNA. That's not the kind of person that he was. And what I love about the partnerships thing is like, look, instead of trying to awkwardly like graft on a part of your business that's not really in your founding DNA, it's not in your bones. You don't just do it really well and natural, and it feels fake. I mean, how many company blogs are just like just the worst thing ever? Because
the people listening to this that in B2B partnerships, they're not looking at their blog, right? Like their company publishes blog posts and they don't read them, right?
No.
Like their employer is like, oh God, I don't want to listen. I don't want to read that.
No, it's,
right. Yeah.
It's like, so yeah, it's like some intern is just copying and pasting, whatever they find.
GPT-3 would beat most company blogs right now. So OpenAI, right. GPT-3 would beat most B2B SaaS blogs.
And that's why things like pure media companies like The Hustle and The Morning Brew and all these have become so valuable and have gotten acquired, because that is their DNA. They're just really good at content. And so whether it doesn't have to be an acquisition, but in the partnership ecosystem, just being able to recognize, look, I don't want to do something that I'm not super, super good at, that's not baked into who we are as a company, and I'm not going to try to win in that space. Can I find who's winning in that space, and what we do pairs with what they do, and then you get to kind of be true to yourself. You get to be more true to who you are. And like, that's so much better of an experience for everybody, for customers as well. To let each part of that funnel, it's like the funnel is not owned by a single company anymore. I don't know. This is me learning this stuff for the first time. So you tell me if I sound like a fool.
No, but so here's the thing. I mean, I have, sometimes it feels like I'm shouting into the void doing the podcast. So thank you everyone for listening. And then like the comments that come through in, LinkedIn or Slack or what have you. I think the reality is that like, if you're practicing partnerships, it's really hard to not be one of the most curious people in your organization. So one individual that I follow and I really love from an entrepreneur standpoint, and I think that's why I really try to bring together partnerships and entrepreneurs. Like, why? I mean, Mark Roberge of HubSpot, CRO, teaches at Harvard, saw an incredible story. Mark, said in the Sales Acceleration Formula, his book, the best salespeople, the best partner people are entrepreneurs. He said he would take that profile over everyone else. And like, I think it's important to drive the distinction that this level of curiosity is the thing that can set us apart. So geeking out on this stuff, Isaac, and like showing some freaking passion, like I could give 2 blank curse words. I'll try not to cuss on this show that much, about the quality of whatever your company is producing. I need to know that you freaking care.
Yeah.
Like, to me, this is a giant chess game. To me, this is a game, and it's fun, and I'm playing to win. I'm genuinely curious about it. It's complex. It's I think a phrase that I've heard is simple, not easy. Partnerships is the opposite. It's complex, not difficult. It's extremely complex. Like each individual thing is not that hard. Striking up a co-reg deal, right? Like from a sales perspective, that's the easiest deal in the world to close, right? Executing it with marketing, that's an extremely easy marketing activity, right? But through the complex webs, you might miss that because they both seem easy. So it's complex, not difficult. And going back to curiosity, one of my favorite founders I follow is Whoah. So he's the founder of Superhuman, of recent fame. Best thing to take away from him right now, content-wise, is how to measure product market fit. Fantastic post on that. It's so good. What he said, someone asked him recently, Rahul, how are you just like hitting home run after home run? How are you so smart? And he said, I'm not smart. I'm just curious. And to me, that's what I want to bring out in this podcast, and like why I love what you just said. Is that's the point, is that we have to be the most curious person in the room in order to influence our peers in marketing, in order to influence our peers in sales, in product, or the C-suite, the CEO. You can't go into their world and try to tell them everything about marketing, because you can't. You can't go into their world and try and tell them everything about sales, because you can't. But you can be more curious about their job than they are.
Yes.
And I think that's the superpower of partnerships.
Man, that's
you're
crazy.
The most curious person in the room.
That's crazy you said, because this is, for the past 10 years, this is what I've been hammering down with thousands of young job seekers. And we tell people crash all the time. a good pitch for a good pitch for a job starts with them. The first thing you talk about is the company, not yourself, right? You show,
Bingo.
because how many people are like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm good at X, Y, and Z. Hire me. And you're like, okay, do you even know what my
You
company
and everyone
is?
else.
Right? Exactly.
Right.
Like you wouldn't go
How do you
looking for a
care?
date. I always tell people you wouldn't go looking for a date by handing out a bullet point list of 10 reasons I'm highly dateable, right? You'd find somebody that you're genuinely interested in, and you'd go up to them and you'd say, I'm interested in you. You fascinate me. I want to learn more about you. Let's grab coffee, right? You would express interest in them. It's the same with job seekers. Hey, your company seems fascinating to me. I went to your website. I listened to this podcast your founder did, and I love what you do. If you open with that, you'll set yourself apart from other job seekers, right? It's no different in this world of partnerships. If you come, okay, I have an offering. How can somebody implement my offering in their, in their process or in their product or whatever? No. Start with them. Wow, I love what you guys are doing. I've noticed the way that this and this and this happens. I'm curious. What's your conversion rate at this stage? What happens here? And just asking those questions, it's incredible what it does.
So this is such a key point that, like, I've said it again and again and again, and people just don't, like, it's so hard to do, and it's easy to listen to and just let it slip by. So for example, to your point, before we really took off in the PandaDoc HubSpot partnership, and then I'll take it to Marketo and Drift, before we really took off, we helped do an analysis on what the most important metric for churn was. Why? Because I'm a tiny little company. We just barely raised our Series A. They're a public company trying to take on Salesforce now. They just took on marketing automation. Now they're taking on CRM. I can't bring them new customers, right? So, and I can't say, oh, we're the best e-signature tool. We're the best whatever. Like, they don't care. What we figured out, what was the most important retention and activation metric, which was closing a deal in CRM. When we figured that out, then we tied everything that we did back to the thing that was most valuable to them, not us, to them. And that's why we became the number one partner in less than 1 year. And PandaDoc was the first ever company that HubSpot invested in, right? HubSpot Ventures, PandaDoc, that's the first investment. Now, I recognize this, and I ran the exact same play with Drift and Marketo. It's the exact same play. So no formal partnership, no nothing. What I realized was, okay, Marketo, was acquired by Vista, owned by Vista. They're trying to either enter back into the public markets or get acquired. The most important thing to them is net dollar retention at their stage of company. What's their number one lever for net dollar retention? The number of contacts in the database. Well, guess what? Drift on average doubles the amount of conversion, at least at the time. Chat was like really novel then. The number of conversions from anonymous website visitor to contact, right? And then that goes into marketing automation. So I don't even have to do revenue share to make Marketo interested. I can just show, hey, look at these 10 customers. And then I built a couple CSMs inside where I'm like, hey, we got inside to your customer account. Check out what's going to happen at your renewal. And then their renewal bill doubled. And the CSM at Marketo is compensated on what? Net dollar retention of their customer accounts. They're like, holy cow, you just doubled the value of my account. I had to do nothing. You're my favorite partner. And then I took those CSMs and those stories up to the exec team and said, I'm going to be your number one partner in less than 1 year. Right? Why? Because I tied myself to their most important metric and their employees' most important metric, and I had the proof. That kind of curiosity and leading with them first, that's why partnerships, I think, is so different than marketing. Marketing is like, think about it. This is so much fun to be able to like look at this holistically, because I love every department. Partnerships to me is just understanding how they all work together. Going out and trying to talk to the masses through marketing, I can't speak to all of them. That's why ABM is such a fad right now in B2B. Oh, I can kind of target and like really speak to my target accounts, but I can't go out and make that same pitch to everyone, because it's not about them. It's going to be about me. We've helped companies like you, and like you do a vertical specific messaging. Like, we've helped other industrial manufacturers streamline their XYZ by ABC. I get what you're doing. You're trying because you have to. You have no other choice. But what if you could instead go to that node of trust, right? That circle of influence, and build those relationships with what's most important to them. And I think that's where this year, this decade, Jay talks about the decade of the ecosystem. My friend Alan Adler, who was on the podcast, he talks about Go-To Ecosystem, has a fantastic webinar coming up about it. I think in February 1st. Check him out, Digital Bridge Partner. So shout out Alan. I'm stoked for that webinar, where he's talking about Go-To Ecosystem, not go to market, Go-To Ecosystem. Like this stuff has always worked in partner land, but now we're starting to like unpack it, like make it more digestible and share the learnings. And man, Isaac, I think if nothing else, if we didn't teach everyone a bunch of new lessons today, I think they can tell that we genuinely care as much as anyone out there, just being entrepreneurs and passionate about the subject matter, man.
It's a lot of fun. I'm excited. I'm excited about the decade of partnerships, the idea of moving from a world of whoever has the loudest bullhorn to whoever is the most genuinely interested in helping solve other people's problems,
Bingo. So with that being said, go to partnerhacker.com or PartnerUp Podcast. We'll have signups on both for the newsletter. Whenever you hear this, that means it's live. So go do it right now. If you're so kind, if you think this is valuable, because I'm bringing a lot more. We got some Jay McBain round 2 is coming up next, which I'm really excited about. That's next week. I got Chip from Workspan. We got Zoom, Laura Padilla round 2. Some awesome guests coming up. I'm so excited. So leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars only. If you want to look at Isaac and me and see what we're geeking out on, or partaking in libations or whatever, check us out on YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe there. And Partner Hacker, sign up for the newsletter, and then we'll see you in person April 27th and 28th at SaaS Connect. So Isaac, episode 1, new chapter in the books.
Absolutely. Had a great time.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all next time. Peace out.